On this episode of the show, I have with me Sek Chai. He's CTO and co-founder at Latent AI, and we're going to be talking about building AI solutions for the edge. Going to be talking about where those agents are going to be helping. Obviously, focusing on a niche is very important. Building out what you're good at, and we're going to also talk to Sek about selling into the federal government and a few other things. Hopefully, if we are able to get to them. Sek, thanks for taking the time.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Before we start, could you tell everyone what Latent AI does?
Latent AI is a startup, and we build tools to bring AI that's built for the cloud into kind of edge devices. Edge has a lot of resource constraint, and our tools then help optimize those models for those target hardware. That's for the edge.
Awesome. I am sure I'm sure there's a million topics we could pick based on what you guys are doing, but I like this one and building AI solutions for the edge. I guess just to start out, obviously I know there are a lot of different AI solutions out there. What makes it more challenging, or what's the difference of building it for the edge?
Yeah, I think, people are familiar with building it for the cloud, right? Building AI itself, training an AI for the cloud and making a good AI model is not that easy, right? It takes some expertise and things like that. So AI itself, developing and deploying it is not an easy job. But then you say, I'm going to build it for the edge. What is that extra constraint makes it more complex, right? Some of it is about the heterogeneity of those devices, right? There's never one set kind of system, whereas the cloud is a little bit more homogeneous. You kind of know the type of GPU, CPU, whatever you want to run. But on the edge, you have all sorts of things from your embedded devices, ranging from your NVIDIA kind of hardware to your Raspberry Pis to your, you name it, right? Everything out there. So what does that mean? The other thing is that not everything is wall powered. Everything is battery powered. Everything has time limits and also constraints, size and power and all that kind of things. That adds to the complexity of building that AI model. And our tools test to abstract it a little bit away from the developer so that you can focus on the AI, right?
Absolutely. And I guess as you kind of are going through the process of building AI solutions for the edge, out of curiosity, I only ask because I've spoken to other AI leaders, and it's interesting their kind of propensity to also leverage AI in terms of some of the internal, tool building or, testing or whatever they can apply it to, because obviously they're in that world. Are you guys seeing some benefits internally from actually AI tools in terms of code generation or test, frameworks, all that kind of stuff?
Definitely, right? So like I said, the AI development is hard enough, and there's so many things that could go wrong from start to end. In fact, there's some studies out there that says only about 10% of any AI projects for the edge ever gets to deployment. So think about it, right? The majority of projects you start never gets to the end. And part of it is the complexity, the skill set that you need. So what we have done to kind of wrap it all up is say, hey, what if we build and use AI to help you along that process, such as like an agent where you can chat with it, you can talk with it, and it gives you the answer as you need it in the context that you need. So for example, you may have a very vague starting point, and you say, I would like to have a camera, I want to use this embedded hardware, where should I start? And that through that conversation, you can kind of arrive at, I've selected this AI model, this data set, and this set of hardware. And when you're comfortable with that, say, okay, let's go train. So you go through a sequence of steps, but the AI is helping you along. Like a chatbot, you just naturally talk with it. The way we think about it is this is your buddy, your peer kind of buddy that, you would sit down and say, let's start a conversation. How do we start this project? But in this case, here's an AI agent that is helping you along.
It's really interesting. Just a side question, because I was talking to somebody we recorded regarding AI, and he mentioned it's almost as though everyone that uses an AI has to develop people manager skills, because you're going to be responsible, while not a real person that's going to, you can see, touch, feel, not that you're going to touch a person, but, see or, be in front of you. It's going to be as though you need to have some of those people management skills. When you refer to like AI as a buddy, and I like that as well, do you kind of feel like we're going to see those leadership skills, those people management skills have to surface even at the IC level more closely or more intensely?
I think so. I think there's different personality, even in the kind of workflow. Let's say an MLOps kind of workflow, right? You start with data engineering. It says, what kind of data do I have? Should I label it and all? To labeling it, to actually training in it, to deploying and putting it in applications. And then there's some operational things, right? A lot of workflow. And within itself, you have different personas, right? Folks that are purely data side of things. They may not need to know a lot of the hardware. And by the time you get to the hardware side of things, you know a lot of that side of things, but not the data side of things or the modeling side, right? So there itself, you already have a change of personas as you go. And what we have done with our agent is to kind of adapt to that, because your language, your lingo, the words that you use are different, right? The things that you're concerned about is different. Mm-hmm. So even within that workflow, you have different personas or different modes that we accommodate such that you get the most out of that conversation, right? That peer, in fact, changes as you go towards that development process.
Absolutely. I like that. When it comes to, the business, you mentioned something interesting to me. I wrote it down, building out what you're already good at. I thought that's actually great advice across anything, any startup. But I did want to talk about that in relation to what you meant in Latent AI, if you want to dive into that for us.
Yeah, I think we start with core technology, things that we know, right? The product that we have started with, it's about optimizations. Meaning, we know that the edge devices have constraints, like we talked about power, size, type of hardware, and things like that. So that's our kind of core tech. We built that out. And we realized quickly that, hey, that itself is not sufficient. We really need to build the tooling to accommodate more of that machine learning process, right? All the way from data to kind of deployment. So we built things around it. And then at this point, we built the agent around that core component. So we kind of scaffold, if you will. And what that means is as we build out the technology, we will know, how is it best to do that optimization for that set hardware. So a GPU may optimize differently from a CPU, for example. So we know that information. And then as we build up that core technology and we wrap it up, we kind of know, well, what is the preference of the models for this type of sensors? What is the preference of hardware based on that set of models? Which one runs best? And what we have done really is collected a number of terabytes of data about how one model can be optimized for whatever set of kind of use cases. Collected all of that, and then that makes the conversations, things that you have for the agent, a little bit richer. It's not going to be a shallow kind of description where you say, hey, I want this, and generically I go out and see what's out there, from Reddit or things that the agent could scour. This is actual telemetry information that we have collected. These are actual operational parameters that we have collected. And that is used then for the developer when he's using our agent to have that conversation. It's backed by data rather than just, things that are out there summarized in a way, right?
Absolutely. When we're talking about obviously building, AI solutions. Obviously, we're talking about it at the edge, and you guys mentioned focusing on things, those core competencies you're already good at. When you're early days within an AI company, and you're kind of looking at your roadmap, and you're trying to forecast out what you want to build, do you ever worry about what the larger model changes are? I guess I'm sure there's ways to build around insulation, but we have seen startups that get swept up within, an iteration of a foundational model. All of a sudden, their product isn't as relevant. Like, is that something that does concern? It sounds like your product's very different in general, but is that a concern, or is that something just outside the scope of something you worry about?
It's something that we pay attention to, right? The AI kind of feel itself, it's moving at exponential pace, right? Here and there, someone comes up with a new idea, new model. People continue to push even the foundation model. How many years ago is ChatGPT, and what version is it now, and how many flavors and variants out there? Quite a lot, right? What we want to make sure is that our core technology supports the kind of basic foundations. The type of convolutions, math, all those kind of things are then portable, right? Yeah, there are cases where, if I give an example of customers asking, right, and they come to us and say, hey, I have this kind of new idea. I want to use the latest and greatest model. I want to use my YOLO, whatever version that's out there. And our question is why? Is it, well, because it's the latest, right? It has the best numbers, of course. But in fact, some of our cases, when we look at our operational data, you may have a good enough performance and, meeting some requirements target with a different type of model, right? It doesn't have to be the state of art, because the state of art could be you just added a lot more stuff that you may not need. And using those operational data is what then helps you then guide to that best good enough to deploy, rather than saying I'm always choosing for, the latest and greatest. Because the latest and greatest may give you there, but you may not absolutely need it, is the key.
Yeah, I think that's actually very true. And I think what's interesting is, if you're going to go after the latest and greatest, you have to understand the impact to your customers as well. Because obviously, they might have certain requirements that might not fit early adoption of those models. And I guess, talking about those customers, I know, you guys do have different type of customer base. I know you do sell to the federal government, which, I was going to ask as a follow-up, does that, I guess, as you said, you keep an eye on those things. Does your customer and, your target customer, even selling into the federal government, does that kind of change your perspective of just keeping track of those, like changes in the foundational model, obviously looking at those metrics and all those type of things? Or is that just go back to your previous answer of you keep an eye on it? But I was just curious if selling to the federal government does come into question there.
No, I think that there's a lot of commonality, right, between either federal or commercial kind of customers. Everybody wants that capability. So you start with that, saying, it's not the model that you're really chasing after, it's that capability. What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to do? Then you say, does the current kind of capability, hardware-wise, model-wise, support that? If not, then of course go up to the kind of latest whatever, right? And we try to offer it in a way that says we meet your needs in terms of that capability. So those are common. The things that are not common maybe is with the security level and other things that, the federal government might need, right? To make sure that the source of the data, the source of the model, those things that needs to be paid attention to, especially for security, are met, right? But in terms of saying, what are really customers looking for, they're really asking for capability. I want to detect this object. I want to be able to do this with my robot. That's the capability. You start with that rather than say, hey, I want the latest model, right? To be able to do this. That's actually going in the wrong way. Saying I'm on the latest and greatest, but really, what are you trying to achieve is really the task at hand.
Absolutely. That's actually great advice. I guess when you do sell into the federal government, just generally speaking, obviously not every startup has a product to do so. I know a lot of people would like to. There's obviously some different challenges, opportunities. I guess it'd be great to kind of hear some of those things you have to do to be prepared to be a vendor to the government.
Yeah, I think these days there's a lot of push and desire to work with companies like startups and things like that. The pace of AI innovation is so fast, and I think a lot of folks in the federal side appreciate the need to collaborate, right? The need to reach out. So that's a good sign. And for us then on the startup and enterprise side, think about that, because they are needs and they are a good customer. I think as an advice for folks looking into going into the federal business, looking at that side of things, is to understand the process. There is a set process in terms of how they procure technology. They look at security and things like that. So those are the things that come up to speed and learn what are those requirements. But generally speaking, I think that there are a lot of kind of institutions or enterprise setups now within the government, even in the current administration, that is kind of pro startups, pro companies coming in, because they understand that the pace of AI innovation is much faster than anyone can take on by itself.
That's very true. And I guess when we're looking at a company like Latent AI, and you guys are very focused on a particular solution, particular part of the ecosystem. You've decided on a particular niche, obviously. When you're focused, as a company on a particular niche, and you're trying to, obviously build that expertise, when you are evaluating the niche, the total addressable market, the opportunity to bring a solution to the market, I mean, how do you evaluate that balance, right? Because I think sometimes you hear of companies, they chase the total addressable market. They think that's the best way, right? They find something that's the widest. They chase that. They think even if they get a small percentage, that works. Sometimes you go, I've talked to a lot of founders, you drill really narrow and you gain a foothold, you gain a reputation, and then you can add services and you can expand from there. I guess you guys are very particular in where you focus. Is that consciously done? Is that just a sheer nature of finding, the right solution that you guys want to offer, just fits better in the roadmap? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And every startup has its own kind of flavor, right? I think for us, we want to start with kind of basic tenet. Like, what are we really after? Rather than saying, what's the product? What's the TAM? Because at that point, when you start TAM focus or product focus, you're driving a solution and then trying to find, who's going to be willing to buy. Or if you look at TAM, you says, well, I'm going to corner this, but you really don't know where you're going. You're just looking at the dollars and cents, right? What we really started to say, edge AI needs to be here because things doesn't scale on the cloud side. You can't take all your data into one source. There's kind of limitations in terms of the bandwidth, horsepower, all those kind of things. Even from a sustainability perspective, right? Here today, pushing everything to the cloud just means a lot of energy being used, when in fact, a lot of things that are processed locally without shipping data here and there have some sustainability green kind of thing. So beyond all that, we are saying, look, there's concerns here we want to do. That's our tenet, right? To be able to say, let's support AI development for everyone. And then from there, all the other good things come with it. Sustainability, scalability comes with that. And as long as we are really onto that same tenet, right, making AI solution, enabling other people to do it, we are really then on that same trajectory, if you will. We might not land exactly where we want to land, but at least we're heading to that same direction. So with that, it makes it a little bit open, makes it a little bit then guided by that basic tenet. And that's how we structure our kind of company, right? Rather than being TAM focused or product focused.
I like that a lot. I 100%. I mean, there's a number of approaches to how you want to go to market, how you want to build the business, how you want to structure it. So I don't think there's a single one size fits all. I think it's interesting how you guys are kind of viewing it. I was going to ask you, you've held various roles in your career. Latent co-founder, since 2018. Before that, you've done some other things. You have a PhD. When you look at your own career and kind of evaluating opportunities you want to pursue, right? I'm sure there's not a shortage of ideas that you have, or ideas that come across your table. When you see something like a latent AI, that evaluation to me is always fascinating because some people see angles and they see things early, and and I think everyone evaluates it differently. When the idea for latent AI came about, how did you evaluate it early days before there was a product?
Yeah, like I said, some part of it is understanding where we want to go. What is the tenet, right? What are we trying to achieve? With my co-founder, I said, how long are we going to really work on this, right? What are some goals? And I think first thing we agree on is, look, as long as we're having fun, we'll continue to add it, right? Because whatever we do, as long as we're having fun, it's not really work per se. That goes with everything that we kind of go at. Let's enjoy the ride. It's really that journey rather than saying, I need to reach somewhere. So, we're on this journey and we continue to learn. The other thing is, with my co-founder and everybody that we bring on, you have to have some grit, right? You have to say, I'm willing to do anything. Like you said, the experience that I have, done everything from, chip fabrication to coding to managing people. You need to have all that. And it is really cycling through that. At a certain point, you want to hand it off. That's when you scale. But I'm growing my skill set in everywhere, and I'm hoping that my team also build that skill set. And as long as you're enjoying it, right, you know that you yourself are growing as a person, and your career as well. that's perfect.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic answer. I guess part of what I was maybe thinking of, and I'll ask as a follow up, is you have held different jobs. You have been in the industry. I know at some point, you founded a computer vision central to be a community for the industry as well. So you've done different things. I have been speaking to a number of founders that have been later career. And I think it's interesting because I'm starting to see a trend of speaking to more of them. I think, first when I started the podcast, I felt it was harder to find those people. Something's shifted where it's becoming easier. And I don't know if it's because a lot of AI startups, you having a PhD in that depth helps, right? Especially if you're going after something, complicated like a latent AI. But I am seeing a growing trend of people with, other work histories, not just straight out of college. And I kind of was curious, within your circle of founders, if you're seeing similar, or is that just, maybe it's just an observation I've had?
No, I've worked with a number of different folks, even in academia, right? University professors and things. And, in my past life, I've done joint work, NSF and all that as well. So I've looked at how even, in a university setting, as an example, how students kind of go through it and the kind of .com boom and all that, right? And everybody wants to say, hey, startup, it's so alluring. Let's get there, right? Now a lot of them says, I need that experience and let me just go at it. Some of them says, startup is the way, right? And they kind of get blindsided from the perspective of say, I want to get rich quick, right? I'm going to jump in. But in fact, a lot of them needs a little bit more on that foundation. So I think what you're hearing, like the folks that are coming back and all that, they appreciate how they're growing. And every company that they go into as they, start, exit and all that, they're building that experience. And that's what it is that gets you there. There's some folks that I've talked to and they come to me and says, hey, I want to be the CEO and CTO. How can I get there, right? Am I ready? And I tell them, look, you're ready today. You're ready today. In the sense of if you are determined to do it, you can. What level you can get to, right? How successful it depends on how you run it. And as you go the second time CTO, CEO, you have a little bit more experience, right? And people are then saying, I can build on top of that. Those that understand that you can build on top of what you have learned will continue to grow and kind of build bigger and better companies from it, right? Those that are first starting, it's not that they couldn't do it. It's just that, maybe they're starting to learn that foundation, starting to learn what they need in order to get the thing done.
Fantastic. I love that. Sek, I want to thank you for taking the time, coming on, sharing with us. It's been fantastic. If somebody does have a follow-up question, I think we might have spurred more questions than I've asked on this episode. What's a good way of connecting with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, right? Look me up, send me a DM. Happy to connect. I'm always about kind of talking to folks that are, into entrepreneurial or in the technology side of things. I've learned a lot from my peers and my mentors. And I'd like to kind of help out other folks as well.
Absolutely. Definitely appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amir. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. That's it for the episode. Be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think, this would be a great episode to share out. I think Sek covered a lot of different areas for us. We did talk about building for the edge, kind of what is happening within that world, selling to the federal government, talking about focusing on a niche, how you identify and evaluate the opportunity in front of you. We covered a lot of areas, and we talked even a little bit about, having some previous work experience and how that benefits in ways, and there's advantages. And I think it's great to bring that conversation to the table. So share this with somebody who might benefit from hearing the episode as well. Also, like, subscribe, comment, let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.